So in continuation with this sort of a novel idea, which is still novel, what does it mean to serve God? How can God need anything? Isn't God perfect? Correct? Anybody wondering that? Do you think most religious people would agree with that notion, that God needs us? Raise of hand. Who thinks God needs us? But God is perfect. I'll let Rabbi Friedman take over. We need Rabbi Friedman. Does true perfection mean that God doesn't need anything? He doesn't need mitzvahs? Is it a kasha? Is it a shaila? Let's continue the Farbrengen. If anyone wants to move closer, if anyone wants to ask a question, we're going to go around. Oh, if anyone wants to buy a book, a bestseller on Amazon, Creating a Life That Matters. We even have Sharpies here, so if anyone wants to get the rabbi's signature, the soft covers are $20, the hard covers are $30. Creating a Life That Matters, available in the lobby together with the tactical kapatas. Maybe you'll hide a book under the tactical. Somebody asks you a question, why did God create the world? And you rip open your kapata and say, here, Creating a Life That Matters for only $19.99 on Amazon. Does true perfection mean that God doesn't need us? If you say that God does need us, that sounds he's not perfect. And if, we'll start there. We'll let the rabbi answer that one. And I know this is a typical response, especially in some of my Farbrengens here. Say, no, God wants us. God wants our mitzvahs. He doesn't need us. This is when the Farbrengen gets really good.
Do we need a mic?
How old are you Menachem?
You got to do something about the acoustics here. So you've heard of a famous Jew, Groucho Marx. His favorite famous joke, I would never belong to a country club that would accept me as a member. Right? It's almost like, well, if God needs me, I'm not going to worship him. If he needs me, he's in trouble. I would never worship a God who needed me. Right? That's pretty much a common... Look, the word need is confusing because we're so familiar with need being a weakness. We're terrified of being needy because that's so wimpish. So what happens? My wife needs me. How can I possibly respect her? She needs me. Well, there's something wrong with her. Is that how it works? So, is need, the word, always associated with weakness? Like, for example, I need to know my purpose in life. Is that a weakness? That's something I should be ashamed of? Or is that the virtue of a human being? If I don't need a purpose in my life, then I'm an animal. So the word need simply means essential. It's essential. It can't be any other way. So, God wants us to keep Shabbos. Can he change his mind? Can it be some other way? Is it not essential to him? It's just something he happens to want? Or does he want it because it's essential? That's really the question. God says he chose the Jewish people out of all the nations of the world. Can he change his mind? It was a choice. It was fun while it lasted. And now he'll go and choose somebody else. No? Possible? So we find in the Rambam in the 13 principles of Jewish faith, one of the 13 principles is to believe with perfect faith that the Torah that we have will never be replaced by God. HaTorah hazos lo tehei muchlefes. It is not replaceable. It's not negotiable, which means God cannot change the Torah. Why is that important? Because if you think that God can change the Torah, you don't know what Torah is. It's essential. It's one of the 13 principles of Jewish faith. So let's use Shabbos as an example. The conventional understanding is God decided to create a world. Turns out that it takes 6 days. In case you're wondering, if you want to create a world, how long will it take you? 6 days. And on the 7th, you rest. So, when the 6th day was up, creation was complete, God rested, and he decided that this is my day of rest, and now he asks us to rest with him. Is that how it happened? Or is it the other way around? The 7th day is a holy day, so God created the world in 6 days so that he can rest on the 7th. In other words, is Shabbos the result of creation, or does Shabbos inform creation? Why did it take 6 days to create the world? Because the 7th day is Shabbos. It doesn't become Shabbos at the end of creation. So the Torah is the blueprint, not the byproduct. So why did God create pork? For us not to eat it. So the plan was we shouldn't eat it, and then he created it to not be eaten. Oh, well. Okay, so the mitzvahs cannot be changed, will never change, even by God, because this is him, and he cannot change. Shabbos is him. He is Shabbosdik. Holy, that's him. He is holy. He can't not be. It's like saying he can't not be God. Is that a weakness? Oh, he's stuck being God. What a handicap. So we have to understand, just logically, this is not a matter of faith. There was nothing besides God, correct? The world was created out of nothing. There was nothing to create. It wasn't like the world was waiting to be created. There was nothing. No plan, no purpose, no reason for the world to exist. Nothing. And God decided to create the world. Where did that desire come from? If nothing exists, it's not a question of what does God need. What could he need? Nothing existed. How can you need something that doesn't exist? Yeah? Not only you don't need, there's nothing to need. Right? It's like, how can you be homesick if you never had a home? The world doesn't exist. It didn't need to exist. So where did this desire come from? So people say, well, God wanted to do us a favor. Do who a favor? We didn't exist. Well, God is a king. You can't be king by yourself. You got to be king over somebody. Well, when did God become a king? There was just him, nothing else. Nothing. So if God desired, where is this desire coming from? From him. This is him. Because there was nothing else. So you can't attribute it to anything because no thing existed. God wanted to be kind to us. We didn't exist. Kindness didn't exist. So what do you mean he wanted to be kind? He created kindness on the first day. So why? So anything that God does must come from his essence, because that's all there was. So there was an argument given by one of the sages. How do we prove that there is a God? How do we know there's a God? Well, if I told you that a book came to be, nobody wrote it, a bottle of ink spilled, and it dried in this sentences, paragraphs, you wouldn't believe me, right? So look at the world and tell me that this happened because a bottle of ink spilled? That's a pretty good argument if you believe in God. It doesn't prove there's a God. If you believe in God, it explains how the world came to be. But if you don't believe in God, it doesn't prove anything. So here's the real issue. Would you believe that a bottle of ink spills and writes a book? Why not? Not possible? Not possible? Not probable. Here's what the real argument is. If you say, in the beginning there was just a bottle of ink, and it spilled and dried like a book. Whoa, no, come on, it can't dry like a book. That's not the problem. The problem is, if there is only a bottle of ink, why did it spill? Who spilled it? That's the question. Could a bottle of ink write a book? I don't know, maybe. But if there's only a bottle of ink, what do you mean it spilled? The wind knocked it over? There's no wind. Scientists say there was some subatomic particle and it exploded, and now you have a world. The problem is not can a particle turn into a universe? I don't know, maybe it can. The question is, if there was just a particle, why did it explode? Why did it explode? Even if there is a particle that always existed. See, this is the problem. If you start with one existence, it's the end of the story. There was just this one thing. Yeah, and then what? Nothing. It's just one thing. It can't spill. It can't explode. What happened? That's why the theory has to begin with two things. There were subatomic particles and some gases. And that, when they collided, it all began with two things. Come on. But you can't start with one, because if there's just one bottle of ink, it won't spill. But if you say, wait a minute, there was just a bottle of ink, and it wanted to write a book, so it spilled. Intentionally. So, that's a good description of God. Why are you calling him a bottle of ink? Why did you just say God? God is a being that always existed who wanted to create a world. So if you attribute will to the bottle of ink, you're just talking about God. You want to call him a bottle of ink, call him a bottle. If you say that the subatomic particle knew what it was doing and wanted to explode, well, then you're talking about God. So what does God mean? A being that had an internal, self-generated desire. There was nothing to make him want. There was nothing to want. It's just something internal in him. Which means it's him. So he can't change his mind. Huh? It was. We got here a little late, but for him it was over. Huh?
No, his will for the world is eternal.
No, the will.
Eventually it will, but his desire was to create a finite world. He always wanted it. He always existed. He always wanted it. Huh? Can't hear. He didn't wait.
Time.
Yeah, he didn't wait. We waited. We're a little slow. But so the point of it is this. When the Zohar says, Eiraisa Yisrael Eiraisa v'kudshabrichu kulu chad, Jews, Torah, and God are all one. What does that mean? If they're all one, which one came first? Now, you didn't understand what I just said. They're all one. Okay, which one came first?
No.
There's another statement in the Zohar that Torah connects to God and Jews connect to Torah. Then you're right. But when it says, no, they're really all one, then there was never a time when God existed without Torah. There was never a time when God existed without Jewish souls, because it's a piece of him. Huh? Yes. For that, God had to come down to Mount Sinai and tell us, otherwise we would never know. Huh? Okay. Did God say it at Sinai? Yeah, before the Zohar, right? The word anoichi, the first word God said, is not really a Hebrew word. The word for I in Hebrew is ani. Where does anochi come from? It's partially Egyptian, I don't know what it is. So the Gemara says, why did God use that word? Because the four letters of the word, Aleph, Nun, Chaf, Yud, is the acronym for I give my soul to you in writing. I'm giving myself to you in writing. I'm writing myself. So God introduces himself by saying, let me bear my soul to you. Write it down. So it's not like I have a shopping list. This is me. Anochi, this is me. So the way to understand it is, God's, first of all, it's a little strange that God says, I took you out of Egypt.
He's got to identify who he is.
It was only 50 days ago. So we had forgotten already.
Sure, on the way, they forgot.
We were counting Sphira. We were counting down to the... So here's what it's suggesting. God says, this is me. This is what I need from you. What entitles me to ask? I took you out of Egypt. See, he's not reminding them. He's saying, I did for you, now I need you to do for me. And that really is what inspired us so intensely that we're still at it. Now, a very fascinating thing. Think for a moment. What is the most memorable line of any president in memory in his inauguration speech? Asks not. Yeah. Right? Now, we're such...
There you go.
And you're not even from Boston. Oh, you are. So, it's amazing. Every president tells you what he is going to do for you, and nobody remembers it. And here one guy gets up and says, never mind what I'm going to do for you. What will you do for the... Everybody remembers it. Because we would much rather serve than be served. So when God said, I need you, that's it, forever. We will never get over that. That's why Judaism is still alive. If it was for my needs, we would have quit a long time ago because we're not getting what we need. And don't keep telling me, yeah, Mashiach will come for 2,000 years. Even communism couldn't last more than 70. It's going to get better. It's going to get better. Okay, 70 years, I don't believe you anymore. So the power of it was, if God says, I need you, how do you say no? How could you say no? So everything in Torah starts to make more sense once you turn it around. Like, God offered the Torah to, you know the story? God offered the Torah to all the other nations. They blew it. When God offered it to the Jewish people, we said something magical, and we got it. What did we say and what did they say? Yeah? Sure. It is the Torah, but it's the oral Torah. So what happened there? God comes to a nation, actually to the angel that represents the nation. And God says, I have commandments. Are you interested? And they very intelligently, rationally, responsibly said, what's a commandment? And God said, never mind. You're not my people. God comes to the Jewish people and says, I have commandments. And they said, sure. Was that smart? The difference is, the other nations reacted to the word commandment. You're giving me a what? Rational, logical. When God came to the Jewish people and said, I have commandments, we just heard the word I. I have. You, for you, anything. What's a commandment? So we were reacting to him, not to the commandment. And God said, that's who I'm looking for.
He said they experienced, God took them out of Egypt, the splitting of the seas, he provided the food, the water.
Okay, so it's not surprising.
They're saying, hey, yeah, you're my man.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Exactly right. But we heard him. commandment, whatever. Who cares? Actually, the same should be true with a marriage. Right? I want to marry you. For what? Never mind. If that's how we're starting, forget it. I want to marry you. It's intimate. There's a serious problem here, okay? In the whole religious thinking universe of almost every other word in the Torah is personal, God being personal, God being emotional, God being fickle. First he brings a flood, then he says, oh, I'll never do that again. What are we supposed to make of all of these seemingly human attributes applied to God? So going back to the question of wanting or needing. So look, God can't need, he's perfect. But then he can't want either. That's also too human. So he doesn't really want, he doesn't really need, he doesn't really get angry, he doesn't really care, he says he's jealous, but he's not. He says he gets pleasure from the sacrifices, he doesn't. He says he'll get angry if you do, he doesn't really. Half the Torah is dismissed as non-literal. God's arm doesn't have an arm. God's mouth doesn't have a mouth. What are we dealing with? This is what we're sacrificing our lives for? One very powerful example. The Mishnah says, God is your employer, and with him as your employer, you can be confident that you will be rewarded. A human employer, you're never sure. But since God is your employer and you're working for him, he will definitely reward you properly. Only one problem. He's not your employer. Right? Don't take it literally. He's not really your employer, and therefore, he won't really pay you anything. So that whole Mishnah is like total nonsense. If he were your employer, he would, but he's not. So, ask any kid in yeshiva, does God have an arm? No, but it says God raised his arm. No, but he doesn't really have an arm. So why does it say he has an arm? It's just a manner of speaking. No, it isn't. It's a flat-out lie. Huh? It's a metaphor. It's a very nice word. What does it mean? It's symbolic. Or there's an even fancier word. It's anthropomorphic. Okay, this is when I give up. You throw words like that at me, and I go, okay. Oh, anthropomorphic. Okay, no further questions. Okay. Yes, language of humans. Yeah. So here's the. If you turn it around, everything makes sense. Anthropomorphic means you're using a human quality or a human trait, and you're applying it to God, who is not human. Why would you do that? Just to confuse everybody? Yeah, so people say, no, to help you understand. Understand what? You tell me he has an arm, he doesn't. No, now I understand. What do I understand?
The results of it would be as if he had an actual arm. If we were doing it, we would be using our arm.
You just said it. You just came up with the answer. It's not anthropomorphic. It's not a human trait attributed to God. When we speak about ourselves, we attribute divine traits to ourselves. By calling this an arm, I'm using a godly term to describe something that's not godly. In other words, we're created in his image. So why do I have this? I have an arm because I'm created in his image. The only difference is his arm is real and mine is a cheap copy. Right? Like you say, a real arm splits a sea. Where's the guy with the capotes? My arm can only split a seam. So whose arm is real? So it's not anthropomorphic, it's deopomorphic. Like, God doesn't speak, humans speak. How did that happen?
They heard the voice at Sinai.
So did he really speak? Or is it just symbolic?
I have no idea how it works, but that's what it says.
Right. And it's real. There's no need to dismiss it. God really spoke. You mean like me? No. He really speaks. I just babble. He said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Now you try it. So who really speaks? You see, we've got it backwards. How did the physical, that is merely a creation, become more real than him? Can't be. God doesn't get angry. Humans get angry. No, humans lose control. That's not called angry. God gets angry. We blow a fuse. It's not the same thing. So the real question is, why does the Torah call my arm an arm? It's not. It helps me understand. By calling this an arm, a tiny little bit of okay, so God has a right arm and a left arm? Okay, I'm starting to understand. But his is the real thing, mine is not. Like God said to Moshe. Moshe said, I got a problem with my... And God said, who do you think created mouths? Who are you talking to? You think you hear? He created your ability to hear. And he doesn't hear? How's that? How did we turn it around to where we are more real than him? We speak, we hear, we have eyes, he has nothing. He doesn't have arms, he doesn't have feelings. He doesn't, Another problem. How do we make fun of idols in Hallel? We make fun of idols because they don't hear, they don't breathe, can't walk. We're saying the same thing about God. He has no arm, he has no eyes, he has no nose. Wow.
What God has or doesn't have.
But that's what we're told. We're told he doesn't have a body, ein le guf v'lo dmus haguf.
Not in the sense that we do.
Exactly. So who is the real thing and who is the copy? We're the real thing and he's the copy? So can you say God doesn't have a real arm? No, he has a real arm, we don't. Can you say God doesn't need anything, humans need? No. God has a genuine need. We're just spoiled rotten. We don't have a real need. The proof is that it changes every year. What I needed last year, I'm not interested in anymore. So who's real? That's the real question. If you look at the Torah, it's been screaming and begging to be heard. God is real. Does God cry? No.
Torah speaks of them hearing the cries.
No, Torah speaks of crying. I always thought that was rain.
Yeah, so we're dismissing too much of Torah. This is not literal, this is not true, this is only symbolic, this is only... We're dealing with a real God or not? But what's happening is that we're describing God in such vague terms, he's practically a nothing. Except that he gets angry. Oh, when he gets angry, other than that, nothing's real. No, we got it wrong. We got it wrong. Just from the first words of the Torah, in the beginning he created. Is that just symbolic? No, he really did create. So he created me with all of my limits, all of my shtick, all of my... So he is real, and I'm just a marshal. That's why serving God is not a metaphor. I was talking to this guy, and he says, you know, if God isn't perfect, then I won't serve him. I said, but if he is perfect, then you can't serve him. So it's almost like, if God needs me, I'm not going to serve him. Well, if he doesn't need you, you certainly can't serve him. You're painting yourself into a corner. Okay, so here's really the Hasidic understanding of the subject. In the process of creation, God created day and night, holy and unholy, Shabbos and weekday, right? Hamavdul ben kodesh l'chol, ben el l'cheshach. So in the creation, there are irreconcilable differences. You're not allowed to make a bracha in the bathroom. Why? Because the bracha is holy, the bathroom is unholy, they don't mix. So there are certain limits even to holiness. Holiness can't go in a place of unholiness. If you're not holy, you will not understand what is holy, because they're not compatible. The weekday activities are incompatible with the holiness of Shabbos. So on Shabbos, these acts are incompatible.
Would you define holy?
That's a good question. But let me finish the point first and remind me. That's in creation. The creation that God created has its, Vayhi Erev, Vayhi Boca, Yom. So God created a day with contrast. Day is not night, night is not day. And you can't mix them. Good is good, bad is bad, can't mix. Holy is holy, unholy, can't mix. So you cannot come into the holy temple if you're in contact with a dead body. Because life and death, incompatible. Can't mix. That's in creation. In creation, there's this restriction. The holy cannot also be unholy. Can't. But if we're talking about God himself, can you say, oh no, God is too big to fit into this room? Can you say something like that? How can God be in this room? He's way too big.
We don't know about what God, we don't know that.
Huh?
He's everywhere.
Up, down,
In a concept of size.
He's
So there
But how? He's so big. Right, exactly. He's bigger than all. So how can he be bigger than the bottle and yet in the bottle?
Because he is everything.
It's like an apple. If you take a small piece of apple, it's the same apple.
He's kind of pieces.
If you're talking about God, you can't call him big. Big is a creation. God created big and God created small. What is he? Big or small? Huh? Beyond.
He's God.
Right. Right. So you can't say he's too big. And that's what people say. You really think God cares whether I drink this or some? Come on, that's so petty. And he is so big. Why would he care? Oh, he's not big. He's God. He created the big and he created the small, and to him they're exactly alike. So nothing is too big for him. Nothing is too small for him. And people say, you think God cares about this? Even I don't care about it. You don't care about it because you have to conserve your energy. You have to pick your battles and you can't be everywhere. God doesn't have that problem. So he can be just as concerned with one person as he is with mankind. Because to him it's the same. So when it comes to God himself, you can't say he's too big to want, he's too big to need. He's not too big. He is whatever he wants to be. And what he wants, that's him. Nobody forces him. So if he wanted to create the world, or desires to create the world, that desire ain't going nowhere. It's forever and ever, indestructible, infinite, right? So this notion like, oh, God can't want. Oh, you're talking about God? What do you mean he can't? Now, in creation, godliness cannot be in a place of unholiness. Yeah, that's true. That's the rule God created. He set up contrasts, opposites, whatever, polarity. What is? Can't be together. In creation, not in the Creator. Exactly true. Yeah. So creation is governed by these rules, not the Creator. So he can't have an arm? What do you mean he can't? Who's dictating these rules? We're going to tell God what he can, what he can't. But it comes from the halachic definitions of you're not allowed to do weekday things on Shabbos. You're not allowed to say a holy words in a bathroom. So we get that impression that God can't be in an unholy place. He created the unholy. What do you mean he can't be? God, he doesn't want us to mix the two, but he doesn't have that restriction. So one second. If in fact God needs you to keep Shabbos, it is the most intense, the most infinite, the most awesome need in the world. So when God came and said, I need you, you can't say no. Can't say no. So we said yes. What else could we say? Because they didn't hear him. They just...
They heard the command. Because they're part of that mindset.
Because they are the nations of the world, so they think like world. We have a little piece of God in us, so we think like him. We hear him, huh? Oh, yeah. Why did he ask them? There are a number of explanations that don't really satisfy. I'll tell you. Because eventually they will change their mind. So offering it to them was like an opening. They weren't ready. It's not going to happen till Mashiach comes. But when Mashiach comes, they will get it. Huh?
That's in line with the Gemara.
Yeah.
You say you can't say no, so I mean, if you can say no, you say, because other people said no. So I mean, the fact that we said yes, was without the Torah, I mean,
No. If you hear him, then you can't say no. If it just sounds like a commandment, you can say, what's a commandment? There's no bechira.
the same thing when Mashiach comes, that aspect will be gone because we'll see him.
Yes.
The clarity will be,
Yes.
will it be boring, like you say he's up in heaven, people mention boring up, you already in heaven, boring. So would that be boring on earth now, if you see him clearly?
We'll still be serving him, not passive. But there will be no challenge, no distraction. But we will be in the relationship. But you're right. There is no choice. In truth, there is no choice. Because truth is only one thing. I mean, it's either true or it's not.
Well, you can choose to accept it.
Right. So when we see it clearly, choice is gone. But wait. The choice is gone, not freedom. It's like I say, you want this cup or this cup? You want this cup or this cup? Right? You have a choice. Now which cup do you want? I didn't take away your freedom. I just took away the other cup. That's right. So, good and evil, which one? Mashiach comes, good. You want it? I haven't changed you. You are still a free agent and you do what you do voluntarily. But this option is gone.
I can stay away from it, I don't have to choose evil, but I can stay away from good?
No.
I can't, because there's nothing else.
Right.
It's the only thing that there is.
Yeah. The only choice left is, will you do it enthusiastically? Right? Because you're going to do it. There's no choice. No, there's no option. You're still choosing what you do. But it's not you're choosing between two things. You're choosing to do what you're doing.
Are you choosing to take that or not to take it?
Choice
Or
is
how,
involvement.
right? Or how. Yeah, you can do it because, there's nothing else to do. Or you can do it enthusiastically. It's your choice.
Rabbi Briggs, so when Moshe Rabbeinu changed Hashem's mind, was that already preordained? Because Hashem doesn't change his mind, right?
That's right.
So did he give Moshe the opportunity to convince him?
Yes, I think Rashi actually says that. Why does God come and tell Avraham that he's going to destroy Saddam?
So you can try to convince him not to.
So that he would argue in favor, to defend them. In fact, we do this on Rosh Hashanah. God says, on Rosh Hashanah, it's a day of judgment, and I'm sitting on the throne of judgment. Blow the shofar and say the proper words, and I'll get up from this throne of judgment, and I will sit on the throne of kindness. So, where is he? Judgment, kindness? We're changing him? No. He wants kindness, but he wants you to ask for it.
Be part of it.
So it's not a change in him. It's an intimacy between him and us.
Also, to change.
Us to change, right?
And for us to change brings in what?
For us to change in reaction to him makes a real relationship. Otherwise, we're just puppets.
A relationship that he wants.
Yes. Okay, so let's put it in practical language. What was God missing before he created the world? Huh? Nothing. So, what disturbed him that made him create a world? It's a very good question. In fact, it's probably the ultimate question. The ink spilled. What made it spill? He had a perfect existence. There was no conflict. There was no problem. Everything was perfect. And he goes and messes it up by creating a world. So when you read the first words of the Torah, in the beginning God created heaven and earth, you got to stop and say, whoa, why?
You know, just have to live with that. Don't know why.
He was already God. Well, what do you want? Will you ever be happy? What does it take to make you happy?
He wanted us.
Okay. The difference is this, and it's a very romantic notion. God being perfect means he was missing nothing, but he was missing someone. Like in a marriage, you're not marrying for something, you're marrying to have someone. The best time to marry someone is when you don't need anything. Because if you need something, you're going to marry for something, not really the person you're married to. So God says, I was perfect, I needed nothing. Join me.
This is part of him to begin with.
Nothing else but him.
But I'm making a distinction between things and something and someone. If you don't need anything, you are perfect. If you don't need anyone, you're a monster.
He wanted a partner in creation.
Right? You're a monster. So, God needing us is not an imperfection. He is perfect, and on top of that, he is also humble.
But there was no us. So what?
Okay, so you're right. Let's back it up a little bit. What there was is aloneness. He was alone. And that was not acceptable.
Not feeling lonely.
No. Not lonely, alone.
Alone. Yeah.
Okay, so God says, and this is all, it's all there once you see it, why did God say when he created woman, why did he say, it's not good for man to be alone, so I'll create a woman? Just go ahead and create. Who is he talking to anyway? When he said it's not good, who's he talking to?
He's telling us about the ultimate.
So
That's for us to learn.
No, he's telling
let's learn. So what he's really saying is, he created Adam, first human being. To Adam, he said, it is not good for you to be alone. Why? Because you're like me. I hate being alone, even though I'm perfect, or maybe because I'm perfect. Why? It's not good. It's not good. It's doable. If you're perfect and if you're self-sufficient and if you're capable, you can be by yourself. What's wrong with that? But it's not good. Where is goodness? Perfection is impressive. It's not good. Good for what? The only way goodness exists is if there are two people. So God is basically saying, I don't want to be alone. Why? Is there anything you can't do? No, I can do everything. But what's the point? I can do it all. And what? For what? So God is saying, I am not enough. By myself, that is so humble or vulnerable. Real vulnerability doesn't mean you can hurt me. Real vulnerability means without you, I'm not complete.
Can't imagine God putting himself in that position.
That's what's so impressive about him.
Say that to man, but for himself.
No. Why do we have that instinct? We got it from him.
So not being alone, I mean, it's the process of giving. In other words, Hashem wants to give to us, and we should be giving to Hashem in terms of that relationship.
But before there's the giving, there's being. Even if we don't do anything for him, we're there. He has us. That's what he's looking for. And that's why even if you don't do a single mitzvah, you're necessary to him. And that's why he has to give you freedom of choice. Without freedom of choice, he's still alone. He's got angels. They don't have freedom of choice, so he's still alone. You don't stop being alone if you create a clone. You're still alone. There's nothing but you. In order to have someone besides him, it has to be someone who could love him or hate him. Yeah. A someone. Yeah.
God created a vessel.
A relationship, yeah. So marriage is really mimicking God. I'm perfect. But just me? Huh? Yes, I've heard that explanation, and I can't really argue with it, but I don't know why that makes it any better. He chose to need us. So does he or doesn't he?
That's what he's asking.
What? If he chose and he doesn't really need. Well, that's even more mysterious. If he doesn't really need and yet he chooses, what's he doing? How does that make it any more acceptable? Like I said to a kid, an 11-year-old boy in Crown Heights, he said, God doesn't need, he just wants. So I said, God wants something he doesn't need? And this 11-year-old kid said, oh yeah, no, that's that. No. No, he's not that immature. Even a human being shouldn't want what he doesn't need. So what do we have here? Number one, God has become real. He's real. He's for real. He's not going away and he's not giving up. So our relationship is the real thing. So if you don't do a mitzvah, he is devastated. Like somebody said, so if I don't do a mitzvah, is he going to die? I said, no, he's not going to die. Oh, so he doesn't really need it. No, that's not correct thinking. He really needs it. It has nothing to do with dying. Right? In the human being, what do I really need? I really need the things that will prevent me from dying. So if I don't have food, I'm going to die. So I need food. No, you don't need food. You need to survive. If you could survive without food, be just as good, maybe better. So does God really need your mitzvah? Yeah. Oh, he'll die without it? No. He needs your mitzvah, not survival. So his desire for your mitzvah is for the mitzvah. It's not a means to an end. It's the real thing. I was talking about how people embellish. God said that you shouldn't work on Shabbos. Ah, yeah, family time. Beautiful. So brilliant. And God said, excuse me, don't work on Shabbos. Right. Spend time with your family. God says, read my lips. I didn't say anything about family. Don't work on Shabbos. Why are you embellishing it? I really want Shabbos. Yeah, so that people will spend time together. Don't do that. It's Shabbos that I want. Don't eat non-kosher food. Oh, very good. People should be a little disciplined in their diet. You don't just eat everything you see. God said, what are you making these speeches for? Just don't eat the pork. Oh, because it has trichinosis. Will you stop it? God says, I mean what I say. I'm not playing games. So don't do that. Keep Shabbos, even if you're not married. It's Shabbos. So every mitzvah stands on its own merit. It's not a means to an end. It's not to get us to heaven. It's Him. So when God says, Anochi, I'm bearing my soul to you. This is me. I can't stand pork being consumed. Will I ever change my mind? It's not my mind. I can't stand it. It will never change. And when you do a mitzvah, it gives God pleasure. Pleasure? You mean like mine? Well, more like infinite. It gives Him infinite pleasure. Oh, I don't understand what infinite pleasure means. I know. That's why God gave you the capacity for finite pleasure so that you have at least an inkling of what that might feel like. So that's why when you get to heaven, by the way, what happens in heaven? You are rewarded. With what? Sure, just when I don't need anything, you're going to give me everything. Once I'm there, I don't need your reward. It's a catch-22. The reward is, you did a mitzvah while you were alive, and you had no idea how much pleasure God got from that mitzvah. When you get to heaven, He will share that pleasure with you. That's your reward. You will see the pleasure that your mitzvah produced. Right now, we don't see it.
Right now, does it affect the soul? When we do mitzvahs, we are building up the soul. I mean, we're purifying the soul.
Does a soul need purification? It's a little piece of God.
Connection between the soul and the body is some sort of...
Yeah, the connection is when the soul influences the human part to do a mitzvah, then the soul gets credit for the improvement in the body. The soul doesn't improve, but it completes its mission by elevating the body. That's its mission.